Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and start our recruiting conversation here at 7 o'clock. I realized that we put this together at the last minute. We're really happy to be joined here by Coach Crisco. Of course, I picked a day today in which two international soccer teams are playing at 7 o'clock. So I've heard from a lot of people that are going to a big soccer game, which is kind of cool. Um, so we're going to go ahead and just start this. People are going to join as we go. If you're here and listening to us, please feel free to put questions into the chat. This is a great opportunity for you to ask questions of the college coach. This is also we also have questions already given to us in advance, which I really appreciate everyone who submitted these. So some of you might be listening to this to YouTube the day after, almost like your favorite podcast, although we won't be interrupted by commercial breaks. So without further ado, we have Coach Crisco here, who is going to be talking about his experience as a college coach, where he is now in the process, and how he got to being the head coach at William Peace and whatnot. So Coach Crisco, go ahead and take it away for us.
Sure. Well, first of all, Zirkle, appreciate you having me, bud. I took over the William Peace program late last year. Didn't really get a full recruiting cycle, so this has been the first summer that we've been back into it. But I've been charged with, bringing a program back to national recognition with a young program. This will be the third program that I've been a part of doing that. First under Mike Kruger at Shenandoah, was charged to rebuild that program, and then again at Guilford College, where Coach Zirkle and I had met under Tom Carmine right before I took over that program. And then shortly, unfortunately, having to leave when the pandemic hit. William Peace was a great opportunity to hop back in. Always been working with young folks, never stopped coaching even in towards that pandemic. So really happy to be in the saddle here at William Peace, and working together with folks to build something new again.
Sure. Yeah, so if you missed that part, Coach Crisco and I, Coach actually coached me in college, and then we also had the pleasure of working together for a year at Guilford, and really enjoyed working with Coach here, and really thankful he's here to answer these questions. So the first thing that I want to touch on, and I gave you questions in advance, but I want to just touch on this briefly. Obviously, your experience as a coach has been at the Division III level. That said, you and I both know that the coaching fraternity is a really small world, that you get to know Division II, Division I coaches as well. Throughout the summer, what are your interactions with other coaches like, and how well would you say that you understand the process or the processes for all levels of NCAA lacrosse?
Pretty well. We all share. Nothing's original. As far as like recruiting tactics and styles, everybody's pretty open and flowing to sharing within the community. However, I've also played at the Division II level and played at a few of the highest levels. So having that experience on the player side, being able to share that, and then have those conversations with the Division II, the Division I coaches, and asking questions about how has the process changed over the years. It's always, you're always able to have those conversations. Everybody's pretty open and honest about it.
So yeah, just for everyone in the background, if you have questions about recruiting, it doesn't necessarily have to be just William Peace or Division III, but it can be, we can talk D1 stuff, we can talk the club ball stuff, Division II, D3, whatever. So as you have questions, feel free to jump those in there. One of the main reasons we want to have this conversation today is yearly I have a conversation with a parent about why their son has not talked to a college coach yet, if they're missing something in the process. Like, I think there's a misconception that the club lacrosse scene, the circuit from early June to mid-July is the end-all be-all for recruiting, and that in between that time period, that's when the phone's going to start ringing off the hook and every single school is going to start recruiting your kid. That's not necessarily the case. So, Coach, can you just talk us through what the recruiting calendar is like for you? And I guess it really starts at the end of your college season, right? That wraps up in April and May, or sometimes in June for some teams, right? Or no, end of May. But where are you in the process now, and what is the process like from here going into the fall?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about our process at the moment. We just concluded our summer travel. We still have a few events here and there that we'll be attending, mainly locally. But we've really been on the road for essentially 2 to 3 months now, just collecting information on players that were interested, trying to see players and get exposure for the program. And then really, now that that's concluded, we're in the office hitting the phones. We've really shifted our focus more towards, admissions approvals, having guys send us their transcripts to make sure that they're a good fit for us academically, and then having them come onto campus for a visit in the next couple weeks, next couple months here going into the winter time. So the summer is this is the time of year where even I speak with some parents, and they're when should we start hitting the panic button? They shouldn't be hitting the panic button just yet. And the main reason why is this shouldn't be a stressful process for anyone. This is actually should be an enjoyable thing. One of the main points of this is like, hey, this is going to be the few times in your life that you really are going to feel wanted. So when coaches reach out to you, it's a good thing. Division 1, Division 2, they have different rules than Division 3. But the Division 1, where September 1 of your junior year, if you're really high up there, the more elite programs out there are going to be reaching out to those guys and filling those spots rather quickly. And then you kind of have those Division 2s that have a similar model that are able to step in and make their offers. So really, this time of year, Division 1s and Division 2s, they're having their offers put out there, but they're still collecting information on guys as well. So you can't really check that off, but the outreach and the connection should start being made. If you're attending prospect days or showcases or within the club scene, you should be having that exposure, which I know coach does a really good job with advocating for his guys. And overall, just having that ability to have these conversations, it's a good thing. So to circle back to what we were saying, it's not panic time just yet. For folks, every program is different. So if you're interested in a program, you should really be in contact with that program, or at least attempting to be in contact with that program.
Yeah, so I'll jump in on just a couple of things that you said from our program's perspective. One of the things that helps us the most, your club team coaches and your club directors are willing to help you in the process with recruiting, right? Specifically with the 2024 teams, Coach Manning, who's our 24 coach, who would be here tonight, he's at a soccer game. He's willing to help it with communication with colleges. I personally have a lot of conversations with parents and players, and we have one-on-one meetings. One of the things that helps us the most is trying to figure out what level and what type of school you are interested in. So if you're interested in, say, William Peace, but maybe William Peace doesn't have the program you're looking for, we can help you find a school that's very similar that helps be the right opportunity for you. Going back to the schedule, right? And I want to kind of finish with this before we move on to more recruiting things. Coach mentioned that September 1st of a player's junior year is the first time that communication with Division 1 lacrosse players where Division 1 schools can talk with high school players. In the grand scheme of things, that is a really small number of players who get that type of communication. So I have dealt with many players who have been really disappointed on September 1st because they don't get a phone call. And one of the things that I recognize in North Carolina lacrosse is that we're not necessarily a hotbed, right? So as a program, we do have the opportunity to go play at, national tournaments, right? Our 2024 team has been in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland this summer, right? Playing in front of really high level coaches, but they don't necessarily get the phone calls as quickly as the kids who are in the hotbeds like Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, et cetera. That doesn't mean that our players don't go on to play at that level later on. One of the things we've always found is that if a player is of that caliber, they tend to play at that level, and they ultimately get seen. In my communications and my conversations with college coaches so far this summer, when we go to these tournaments, they're guys on the sidelines. It's really easy for us as program directors or head coaches to talk to coaches. Just like I'm having a conversation with Coach Crisco now, we have those conversations with the college guys who are there. Multiple conversations with Division I coaches, and it sounds like most classes are becoming full, but it's 75 to 80% full, and they're saving spots for the kids who really shine later on. And in our experience, we've had about 30 different kids in our program play Division I lacrosse and go on to that level. Only one of those kids is actually committed before their senior year. So the idea of there being this panic button or this concern about maybe not getting there, it's not necessarily something that I'm concerned of as a program director. And it sounds like from your perspective as well, Coach, that's not necessarily a concern as well.
Yeah, nobody should be hitting the panic button just yet. As far as we were actually having this conversation prior, one of the questions that is commonly asked is what level is my kid going to play? Well, what level is our college coaches reaching out to you? If when I reach out to a club director or a high school coach or whomever is advocating for the individual, very few times do I go off of just, hey, this guy's a Division I player, or this guy's a Division II, or this guy's only a Division III guy. I wait for other colleges to look at this player and evaluate them just as much as I evaluate them, to know, like, oh yeah, this guy is a elite level talent, especially when you're looking at, like, right now, the 25s and the 26s. Like, if you're good, you're good. But that doesn't mean you may be a Division I guy. You may be a high level Division III All-American. There's no shame in that. There's good lacrosse being played at all levels, so there's an opportunity for anybody to play. You got to find that right fit for yourself.
Right, and really, and tell me if you agree with this or not. The way I personally see it is there are buckets of players, right? There are pools of players, and lots of players fill different buckets, right? At the most elite level of Division I lacrosse, your Dukes, your Virginias, your Princetons, Yales, etc. That is like the best of the absolute best. Those are the kids who are freakishly athletic, like really big if you're a defender. They have a phenomenal stick. They can pass with their left and right hand. They're picking the ball up every single time. They have great grades. Their hustle's there. Everything, they check every single box. And then the mid to low tier Division I is a bucket and a pool of players that is also the high tier of Division II and the high tier of Division III, right? So maybe you have phenomenal stick skills and you have great grades and you're all over the place, all over the field, doing every single thing, but you're not 6'5", or you are a really big, freakishly athletic kid, but your stick skill is not perfect, or maybe you get a little lost in the field. That's what tends to be moving you down in a ranking, right? And then there's also just the mid-level Division II, Division III, which is very similar. And so it kind of goes down in tiers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all Division I's Division I and then all Division II is Division II. A lot of those schools and those levels kind of cross over in terms of those ability levels. As we're talking about that, what specifically are you looking for when you go to recruit during the summer or during the fall at a tournament? What types of things are you looking for in a kid?
Well, athleticism is the big part. Is, can you play the game fast? And that's both physically and mentally. And with that being said, we had mentioned, like, oh, the 6'5" defender. Just because a guy's 6'5" doesn't mean he's Division I. Maybe he doesn't have the feet. or maybe he, has certain attributes that one program likes, but another one doesn't, and for me, I'm looking at guys on the attack end, especially if you're working behind the cage, or if are you a role player? Are you a finisher, or are you a guy who starts the offense? And then in the midfield, I'm looking for runners, guys that can get up and down the field and want to be athletes. Defensively, I've evolved into that. Hey, I want the guys on the defense to be just as much as runners as they are in the midfield. Um, that's not to say that there's not a space for the big, strong tree stump defender. I'm sure you've remembered a few of those that you went against in the ODAC there, Chandler. But there's a place and a role for everybody. When I look at my goalies, I want somebody that's going to command and make good outlets and make good decisions with the ball. And there's a lot of factors that go into each position. But that is actually something that I would highly encourage players to have that conversation with the coach. If you get a coach on the phone, ask him, like, what do you like about my game? What do you dislike about my game? And what can I do better if you've seen my film? I love it when guys send me film and they ask me for feedback instead of just being like, hey coach, here's my film. Let me know if you got a spot for me. Let's have a lacrosse conversation. Let's get to know each other both lacrosse wise, and as far as people, family, getting to know guys in that's what I'm looking for is guys who love the game, want to get better at the game, and want to pursue greatness in any form of elevating their game.
Sure. So now that we've hit the end of the summer travel season, everyone who's played for us, they wrapped up our final summer tournaments, right? Some of our kids are doing showcases and prospect days as we go. Mm-hmm. But for our kids, specifically the 24s, what do they need to be doing? Like if they're trying to find a college that's the right fit for them, what do you think that they need to do to try and start those conversations with college coaches and to get on campus in the fall? Like what's the next steps from your perspective?
Well, I mean, understanding what the three elements are, the prospect days are your chance to kick the tires and get an experience and get in front of that coach, and understand what kind of style he is. Looking at, I've always said that I'm a teacher more so than I am a recruiter or a GM. The difference between those are the GM coaches are the guys that sit there and allow their assistants to do their thing and essentially run the program, which isn't a bad thing. But the GM coaches are basically just making sure the budget's good and they go. Nothing against those guys. They're great people. They're very friendly. The recruiters are the guys who basically say, hey, you're not getting the job done. I'm going to go find somebody that will. And then the teachers are the coaches that bring guys in to develop them. And each coach has a little bit of all three in them. It's just where do you lean more towards? I think that's an important thing to understand. And then the prospect days really is your opportunity to be a collegiate lacrosse player for a day. I know each program does it a little differently. You got to understand, is it as soon as you get an invite to a prospect day, pick up the phone, call the coach and be like, hey, I got your invite. Just want to gauge where your interest in me, again, and ask those questions. Where do you see me fitting in? If you're looking more towards the showcases, I know they do a lot of the showcases before the club events nowadays. That's exactly what it is. It's a showcase. It's your time to go show off your talent. There's very little team schemes within those, but go show off your talent and, have fun with it, meet people, play with different styles, learn some different things from different people. I know Chandler, when we were coaching, we had 17 guys on or 17 states on our roster. There were a lot of different styles on that roster. I think that's where you can see the showcase style is like, okay, well, what style works best for me? And you get exposure with coaches that way. But then the club scene is, how does this guy work within this system? Is he okay with being coached? Is he, this is he a guy that makes an impact on his team? That's really the difference between the club scene and the showcase. Um, and there's value in each one of those elements to the summer circuit. So knowing that and knowing what they're worth in the long run, that's what people need to understand when you're going into that.
Right.
You know, so if
So
you
I'll-
if you if you hit all three of those, and I think you have to be careful about is your return on investment. If you're going to 101 showcases and you're going to 100 prospect days, and I know that's an exaggeration, but if you're burning yourself out that way, and you're spending so much money, and you realize, hey, most of the interest I'm getting is from Division III coaches. Well, Division III coaches don't have athletic money to give you to get that return on investment. So, kind of got to figure out where you're settling in there so that you understand that you're not spending a fortune and putting mom and dad in debt to go to all these events.
Right. So some of the stuff that you kind of touched on here, and we talk about this with our club program all the time, is the function of club lacrosse is to have a team that you can go play on and you can develop as a player with during the off season of your actual high school teams. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a place to find people who are going to advocate for you, coaches who are going to help you get better, but also be willing to talk on your behalf for other coaches. Right. You mentioned, hey, if you get a prospect day invite, pick up the phone, ask the college coach, hey, is this for real? Like, hey, is this something, do you know who I am? If you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can send a response email. You can also have us send that email for you, or you contact us and let us help you figure it out. There is definitely a Division I college lacrosse program in the area that will send an email to everybody in their distribution list and say, hey, we saw you play. You did a great job. We have 3 spots available, one for a goalie, one for a faceoff guy, one for the best available player, with no intention of actually trying to get that player to come be a recruit on their campus. They just want the kid for the prospect day, right? So we can help you figure out if that is a thing or not. Prospect days for college campuses in many ways are ways to help pay for the college coaches, the assistant coach's salary. That doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile. And in many ways, I would say that prospect days are more valuable for seniors and really serious juniors to try and evaluate the type of school that they're interested in and to be on those campuses. The showcases are great because you get to see more players or you see more coaches. I really personally like the showcases that are the days before the tournaments, especially when they're in hotbed areas, but also when they are ones where you can actually work with the college coaches and they coach you for a little bit. While you're going through this process, you should be kind of advocating for yourself and figuring out what styles of coaching that you like, right? And what types of things you learn. If you could see yourself playing for that coach, maybe there's a school that you've never, heard of before, and you decide, hey, I actually really like working for that coach. I might want to check it out later on. And that leads you to go do a prospect day. Again, I think prospect days towards the end of the cycle, right? Like going into the fall of the senior year makes a ton of sense for that player to go get on campus and actually interact with the coach, interact with the players, which is huge. If you have the ability to spend the night on campus during a prospect day, when we were working at Guilford together, we did a fall tournament, and the kids that we were seriously trying to recruit, they would spend the night with the players on the team, and they would actually get to know what the campus was like, what the kids who the students who are at the school who don't play lacrosse were like, because they're in the same dorms together. Just trying to get that feel for what the school is and isn't is really helpful for that decision making process. So coach, as these players are trying to reach out to coaches what are your do's and don'ts for communication? Because we're now at the point where you're going to start trying to recruit. You're going to send emails to players saying, "Hey, we want you to come on campus." Um, they're going to have to respond. You might pick up the phone, make phone calls. You might get kids on campus. And I know we've talked about some horror stories before of things that players have done when they've gotten on campus that just turn us off immediately. But what are the positives? What are things that you're looking for in communication with the kids and also the parents as well here?
Yeah, the parents are important as well. I'm glad you mentioned that. The do's and don'ts is it's a job interview. You're essentially it's your first job interview, and you're working towards getting it, getting yourself to where you want to be. Your work essentially, whoever you end up playing for is going to be a huge advocate for you, not just for the 4 years that you're there, but hopefully for the next 40, if the coach is doing it right. Still have some great relationships with players that I've coached, and still doing recommendations for them to this day. But the don'ts are you shouldn't show up and just ask coach, "Where's the party scene?" We've had that nightmare come through. And then a few others is just like, hey, we need to have a clear understanding of what we're doing here, and why the player is there and why the coach wants them there. You got to have that mutual respect and understanding. And then moving forward, having the tough conversations and the clear conversations. You shouldn't be sitting there as a college coach. We shouldn't be sitting there pulling teeth, having a conversation with an individual. Like, try to be personable. I know sometimes it's uncomfortable because you may be a little bit more of a sheltered or introvert, but try to put your best foot forward in the best way possible. And as far as phone calls and text messages and emails, make sure you have your information right. I tried to call an individual today who sent me an email. He wrote his number down wrong. So it's that's somebody that missed out on an opportunity. But you got to really be an advocate for yourself in the process. And I think one of the most important things you can possibly do is follow up. So we're busy people. We have lives, we have families, and essentially each of these coaches have 30 to 40 guys that they consider their own kids themselves. So they're trying to stay active in their lives as well. So when coaches reach out to you, make sure that you get back to them, even if it's just, okay, I understand. Oh, coach, I'm not interested. Don't insult the program or the coach as they go through. I know, Chandler, you got one of those emails back in the day where it's just, listen, if you're not interested in a program, say thank you. I'm exploring other avenues. And then coaches will respect that. So those are some of the do's and don'ts. Put yourself out there, but don't put yourself out there in a negative way. Understand that this is a professional thing. It's not a frat house, but it is a small fraternity, the lacrosse world. So coaches talk, and we all understand that we want you to be, productive in your college experience, and we want you to enjoy your recruiting experience. But it's also a thing where it's a mutual understanding between the player and coach moving forward in that relationship.
Right, and I'll also say it goes both ways in a couple different aspects here. If you are a player who forms a good relationship with a coach, but that coach doesn't have the right thing on campus for you, engineering is a thing that comes up all the time. I hear potential prospects or potential college students say, "Hey, I really want to play lacrosse, but I also want to do engineering." Well, that's a small pool of schools, and players who, in my experience, who've had good experiences and good relationships with their coaches those coaches are sometimes willing to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, there's this kid here in North Carolina. I want to recruit him, but I can't. He doesn't have the right, academic thing. And coaches will actually help out. I've had that conversation with other colleges before. I've asked coaches to say, "Hey, would you plug this kid for us?" And it's, it helps. I'll throw my weight around as much as I can. I have a finite amount of it. Um, but if I ask Coach Crisco to jump in and help somebody else get recruited somewhere else, that is something that takes place. It's a lot easier to do that when you're a good person. I'll take a second to reference a quick story that Coach mentioned. We had a player, and this goes to the don'ts of what to do when you're communicating with a coach. They set up a visit with Coach Crisco at Guilford, and I didn't actually know what was happening at the time, but they used my name to get there, which made me feel great about myself. They went on the recruiting visit, and all their questions were about where the parties were on campus and how attractive the women were, et cetera, et cetera. And they finished their recruiting visit by saying, where's the best bar downtown? And I believe they asked where they take fake IDs. So that is the exact opposite of everything that you should be doing. Good questions to ask. And honestly, if you are about to have your first conversation with a college coach, shoot me a text, give me a phone call. I'll help walk you through some of these questions of things that you can ask. Like, what are the students, what are the lacrosse players on your campus, what do they major in? What do they do after school? How many of your players get jobs? Outside of lacrosse, what are your players interested in? What are you most proud of in your program as a coach? Like, these types of conversations and things that you can get going. These are great conversation tools, great questions to ask. They show that you're interested. They show that you're not just going to sit there quietly. Parents, it's important for you to be able to talk to the college coach and whatnot, but just like when your child's playing in the high school season, that coach is effectively your child's parent during the period of lacrosse that's being played, right? So it's really important for your child to be able to talk to the college coach on their own. And if you get into these conversations and recruiting visits where it's only A to B, the college coach to the parent, that's not as efficient, right? So prep your child for how to talk to a college coach. It might be weird to talk to an adult, but have those conversations so that you can, feel as prepared as possible to represent yourself well.
Yeah, I mean, there's four elements to the conversation that you really need to pull out of the conversation with the coach. Is you got to be on the same page with what you're looking for in your college experience with academics, location wise. Cost can be a discussion in that first conversation. It probably won't go too far in depth there, but you can at least know that is a conversation to be had in the future. And then just the overall program experience. Coach, how many guys you got on your roster? How many goalies do you have? How many, you got to understand where you are in their recruiting pool, and then also where they see you fitting on the current roster.
Yeah, where do you see me fitting in is a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And then, what about my game makes you see me there? So again, we can have those conversations at length. Those are the 4 points that I usually hit on or hope that somebody asks me about when I'm on the phone with them. Because again, you may be, a guy who likes the countryside and doesn't really want to be in a big city, but the school's in a big city. So why are you going to put yourself in a situation where you're uncomfortable and probably won't be successful if you don't feel like you will be in that academic environment and do well? So that's just something to have a conversation about and do your research.
Right. And again, the majority of the things we're talking about right now, they are related to rising seniors, right? That's really who we're thinking about in the recruiting process. That's where the majority of college decisions take place. For our 26s and 25s, the 25s thinking about, maybe some of them will get phone calls on September 1st, probably not. But for those players, the biggest thing in my opinion now, and feel free to jump in on this, is you got to make sure that you have the best grades possible, because your grades are going to translate into money. The difference between a 3.3 GPA and a 3.5 GPA could be as much as $2,000 a year. And if you think about that, over the course of 4 years, that's almost $8,000 that you're not having to pay, that academically you are going to be saving, right? In the admissions process, and the college admissions process, you are given money based on your grades, or you're given academic support. And that academic support, whether it be at the Division I, Division II, or Division III level, it's going to be based on how well you do on the SAT, ACT, but really on your GPA. So the higher your GPA is, the more money you are going to save in the long term. At the same time, developing your skills is the biggest thing, right? Getting as good as you possibly can, asking your coaches what you need to work on, understanding that their feedback is probably going to be honest, and sometimes it's going to be hurtful. Like maybe you're not fast enough and you need to get a lot faster, or maybe your stick skills aren't good enough. Work on those things as much as you can, and then try and get on campuses. The idea of doing prospect days is great. Showcases are great, because they'll get you onto college campuses a lot of the time. And you want to be able to see schools and just decide, does this have a good feel for me? Taking an admissions tour at a college is totally free. All it's going to cost you is about an hour of your time to go hear what a school is like. And you should do it at different levels. I would highly recommend, maybe you project as a Division III, Division II lacrosse player, where the school size is somewhere between 2,000 to 6,000 people. You should still go to, the University of North Carolina and NC State, or, the University of Tennessee, just to take a visit if you're there and just see what you like about it. Sometimes the best advice that we give kids is to figure out what you really like. And if a really big school is what you want, there's nothing wrong with going and playing club lacrosse as opposed to playing, NCAA lacrosse. So it really is about you exploring and asking a bunch of questions and figuring out what you're interested in. If you really are on the mindset of NCAA lacrosse is what I want to do, go make sure you try and find schools of the level that your coaches are thinking that you're like. Find a range, find the high end of your range, find the low end of your range, and go see all those schools, and then start trying to form connections with the coaches there. The earlier you form connections, the better. Like I said before, there have definitely been experiences where it's actually happening this year, where a player does great at a prospect day with a school that is of a higher level than they can attain. Maybe they could walk on at that program, but that coach is willing to say, hey, here's a school slightly below that's a great school academically, fits everything you want. We're willing to help you out and have a phone call for you. So try and get on as many campuses as you can, try and explore as much as you can. And that way, when you get to your senior year in the fall, you know a lot more, and you're going to have a little bit more of a better base for having conversation with those college coaches. Anything you'd want to add to that, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's just as much as you're finding out what you like, you got to find out what you don't like. And if a big school is something that you don't feel comfortable with, you don't feel like you'll be successful at, then visit some of those schools so that you know that. Have conversations with heads of departments, but that's always a good one. If you're very focused on the academic side, which you all should be, because that's the purpose of this. You should be getting involved with folks that are within the same major. Ask questions. I think the more curious you are through your recruiting process, the more enjoyable of a process it's going to be, because you'll learn a lot more.
Sure. Coach, I have one more question for you, and then I'm just going to throw this to the group chat. If anyone has a question here and you want to throw it in the chat, please feel free. No pressure otherwise. But can you talk us through what the admissions side of things is like from your perspective as a coach?
Sure.
I tell parents all the time, my experiences, you're actively going through helping get kids into school.
Mhm.
College coaches work pretty symbiotically with the admissions department, and then they also work with the other offices that help with financial aid, right? So it's kind of this like three-headed recruiting approach. Can you talk to us about what that looks like, and then you maybe briefly touch on what scholarship looks like for the higher levels of D1 and D2. But what does admissions look like from your perspective?
Well, admissions, we had mentioned get the highest grades you could get. Always have your transcripts handy, whether it just be a picture on your phone or have an email ready to and drafted. Because we go through a pre-approval process where we speak with players, find out if we're a good match academically with what they want, and then we request their transcripts so that we can take them over to admissions and have that conversation with admissions, so that when their application does come through, admissions already knows who they are. And that allows them to almost fast track the process. So once the application is open, which it now is for a lot of early college early applications, the Common App will be opening up here soon. But those are questions you should ask through the process as well. It's like, do you accept the Common App? Are you a test optional school? Because again, we highly encourage folks to go test optional these days, just because it's an easier process and gives the admissions department a better look at what kind of student you are overall. So with that being said, just a little warning out there, the BTB, whatever it is.
Chat GPT, yes.
Okay, all
You're
right.
getting old, coach.
I am, right? So we did have an individual get rejected because he used that for his college essay. Don't do it. I don't know how they find out, but they do that stuff. So don't cut corners in the application process. Go through it with in the best way you can, and putting your best foot forward. So with that, we get you pre-approved academically with your transcripts. Make sure you're a good candidate for admissions. Then we ask you to send us the most updated film that you have. Once you have that, and then with the admissions process, we'll get you on campus for a visit. You meet with our academic advisor, who then puts you out on a tour. The nice thing is our assistant coach Tanner, he is actually a William Peace advisor for many years. So he gives you the tours, teach you the history of the campus. You get to learn a lot about what the historical value of a campus is on any tour that you go on. So that's a neat thing that you get to do. Then you get exposure to different departments of where you fit with your educational interests. And then once you have that sit down talk face to face with the coach, the admissions process really takes off once that application is in. That application goes in. It takes a little while these days for financial aid. I think nationally the date has actually been moved back. So understanding that if finances is a part of your decision, then you may have to make your decision a little bit later, or you have to have that conversation with the coach being like, listen, we're not worried about the finances. We're ready to make the decision on the school. Not everybody has that luxury. So understanding that if this is where you want to be, get it in place so that the coach can advocate for you in different areas with admissions and financial aid. Division III coaches are limited in what they can do with financial aid, obviously. Division II and Division I, they have a different avenue for that as well. Chandler, I'm pretty sure you have the stats on how many scholarships are out there these days. But it's a little bit different through that. So once financial aid comes out, it's important to know whether a school is goes off need based, or are they fully funded and only giving you a merit scholarship. So understand what you're expecting with FAFSA moving forward. So once all that information is there, you can make an educated decision on what school is your best fit. Again, you're looking at education, location, cost, and your overall athletic opportunity. So if those 4 boxes are checked and they're the best thing for you, move forward.
Right. And there definitely are different ways to save money on college, right? They're low interest loans that work out. Your college coach, even at the Division III level, has a little bit of wiggle room to help every now and then with certain um, pricing of the school. They can, if a player is of a great caliber that they really, really want to get in, they can throw a little bit of weight around to maybe get them up the next band. I'm not going to make you say if you have that ability or not, particularly at William Peace, because that's technically supposed to be a little bit of a gray area, right? But we have seen in the past that there are players who, need an extra $2,000 off of school, and that can kind of get moved based on conversations between coaches and financial aid and admissions, et cetera. The other thing is scholarships. Like if you're interested in trying to make school cheaper for you, obviously there's athletic scholarships, which are part of it, which is a Division I, Division II level. But then there's just general scholarships that are out there. There are general programs at schools that may have nothing to do with athletics that are community service based, or they're based on are you of a certain religion or whatnot, right? There are things that are just totally out there that you can find and apply for, that can take money off of school and make that easier. And your college coach is somebody who can act as an unofficial admissions counselor and liaison for you with the school. That's why having a great relationship with them really kind of matters. We could probably do a whole hour talking about that, but I do want to wrap this up. With that said, I have a great question here from Lee Taft. Looking at your current roster and just kind of college life in general, what percentage of the players that you have that you're recruiting are ones that you just find out on a field in the middle of the summer? And how many of those are ones who've done the legwork and reached out to you and said, hey, we're interested? I have some thoughts on this, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it really depends on the program. There's some that are out there that are like, there's programs out there that have that national recognition that everybody's reaching out to. I'm pretty sure everybody at some point is interested in Salisbury. So that's kind of that gray area that fixes that stat. But I would say it's anywhere between like 70-30, 80-20, for really guys that were identified, brought in, versus guys that just reached out and said, I'm interested and I want to come here. Every college coach would like that more to be more 50-50 and like have those guys do the legwork and be interested. If you get your program to 50-50 and you have that national recognition, great, good for you. That means you're not competing with other schools to have that interest involved. But some of the best players I coached, first phone call, you ever hear of Guilford? Nope. All right, well, come on down. Let's see how it works out. And other things of that nature. It's like coaches do a lot of work, do a lot of legwork to get their brand out there and identify players that they feel like are a good fit for their level, and they're always trying to elevate their level of competition as well. But yeah, the players that do reach out, I will say they get a lot of attention. Players that reach out and do the legwork, not necessarily, we can tell when it's the parent doing the legwork versus the player. But when we start developing that relationship with the player and the player's doing the legwork, like for instance, I'm on the phone these days trying to get transcripts in. The difference between the individual who gets it to me in a couple hours versus the individual who says, I need a couple weeks to get it gathered, and I have to send a reminder here and there. That's a little bit different. So the ones who are more proactive in the recruiting process, yeah, there's fewer of them, but coaches want more of those guys. If you show interest in a program, the program's going to show interest in you. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And honestly, from my perspective as a club director, the kids who are reaching out to schools, and I always ask that, players who are really serious about college, recruiting, that they CC or Hilltop or email on it so I can know. And if a school is a great fit, I can also follow up as the director, which also, carries weight and whatnot. but the kids who are reaching out are the ones who tend to find their home a little bit quicker. If you're just waiting on somebody to reach out to you, that doesn't help as much. Um, so I always highly recommend, reaching out. And I just think that that's just generally speaking, just a lot easier for you. And the final thing is you also have to be willing to be rejected, whether that is in the form of a coach not responding, which does happen, unfortunately. We ask that our college coaches or that our players always respond if somebody reaches out to them. We don't like the term ghosting, right? Where they don't respond at all. Like maybe a player thinks that, William Peace is just below them, right? Like I'm sure you've probably had that interaction, right? We had that at Guilford all the time, right? It's a Division III school. I'm better than Division III, right? When maybe that's not actually the case. But we ask our players to reach out anyways because it still helps our program and maybe the kid down the line, from our program that to reach out. But you know, also understand that there are a finite number of places and classes. Schools may not have a spot for you, or maybe you're not a fit, or maybe just something isn't right to make it that program wants you. So casting a wide net is important. And for every school that's out there are a couple other schools that are very similar, right? So maybe William Peace isn't the right option for you, but another school down the road is. So reach out to try and to all those schools if you can, unless you find that one's really, really the one you want to be at, and then continue to pursue it. And if you know for a fact that one school is exactly what you want, ask for help. Let us know so that we can help you with that process as well. Because I would say that from the flip side of what you just said about that 70-30 split is 80% of the time the kid that's reaching out and really wants the school and really likes the school, if they're good enough to play there, we'll get them there. And so just make sure you're being proactive with that is really key. So coach, is there anything else that we haven't touched on here that you want to jump in on before we sign off here tonight?
Yeah, I always like to mention this because I mentioned this to some of the club kids I've worked with in the past is don't worry about like what your friends are doing in the social media world. And oh well, coach, so and so down the road has committed and I'm better than him, and whatever. Don't worry about the clout or the name. Find the best fit for you. If you found a school that has your program solid academically, they're interested in you, you're interested in them, but then somebody who has none of the information that you have about that program or that school is cast a shadow on that, don't worry about it. Do what's best for you. Do what's going to make your collegiate experience and your opportunity to play collegiate lacrosse the best, and don't worry about what other people are doing. And it's also supposed to be, I mentioned this at the top of our conversation, is it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience. Do not let it get out of hand and stressful. It's the first time that the world is interested in having you come play for them and play the sport that you love. Enjoy the experience. Don't let it stress you out. And then if it is stressing you out, have the conversation with Chandler and make sure that you're not freaking yourself out, because it's supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach, we hope to get you to a practice here soon. We
Sure.
try and get you on campus or not on campus, at a practice with us at least once a year. We'll be working pretty hard to get college coaches to our campus in the fall specifically, just so they can interact with our players. I did put in the group chat the recruiting questionnaire for William Peace, just in case anybody wants to sign up for when prospect days or anything like that come up. So Coach Crisco is a great guy. He's helping us out here, so I'd like to plug him. I really enjoyed playing for him as a player. So he's one of the good guys in recruiting or in the college lacrosse world. So I would be very happy sending my kids to play for him. Maybe his school's not the right fit, but this is a process of trying to figure it out. So if you want to go explore, go see the campus, I would highly recommend that at some point. But that's all for us here. If you guys have other questions about college recruiting, let us know. We also have a recruiting survey that I've had conversations with lots of families. If you want to set up a time to talk recruiting with me, send me an email. I'll send you the recruiting link, and we can go from there. So looking forward to helping you all with this process, and I appreciate everybody for jumping on here. And Coach Crisco, thank you so much. So
Amen. Thanks for having me.
absolutely. All right. Take care. See you guys.